Hello, Caroline at Spirit of Nature Art, back with episode 7 of the Enchanted Garden, this amazing collaboration with Rachel Tribble. Today we're going to be focusing on our last blank page that you can see on the right hand side of our wonderful altered lap book. And I have in front of me a whole load of art that Rachel sent to me. Got this beautiful hummingbird. We have that little bunny over on the other side. I've got all these wonderful flowers. So this is a whole part of the artwork that Rachel sent to me that I hadn't even kind of looked at yet. So I put a whole load of things in front of me and just started fussy cutting. And you know what, this page went so many different directions. You can see here I've just kind of disembodied the hummingbird and taken those lovely wings off, and I'm just kind of playing around with how things might go together. And I think often it's in the playing that we then end up with the final result, which might look nothing like where we first started out, but that kind of movement of our hands, the playing around. Look, Bunny looks so cute with those wings, but actually Bunny doesn't end up, well, Bunny ends up in the final piece, but the wings don't. So I'm just looking at this wonderful swirl here now and thinking about how this might be incorporated. So I'm tearing rather than fussy cutting this, kind of thinking about the torn edges that we've used elsewhere in the project, and just really playing and experimenting. And I think that that's such an important part of art, is play and experiment, without the need for it to be perfect first time. And I will tell you now, this page went through so many different kind of layouts and different looks, and there was a lot of moving things around and faffing and trying things, just like I'm trying things here, just experimenting and being curious. What if I put this here? And I would say, I mean, obviously this video is just over 20 minutes, it's edited, there's a lot of fast forwarding, but this page took me best part of a week of cutting things out, putting them down, looking at them, walking away, sleeping on it, coming back, looking at it again, changing it, adding something else. So I wanted to include a lot of that kind of playing around, just because I think that we so often see the finished product, don't we? We see the end bit and think that when we're creating that we need to jump straight to the end bit as well. So I have left quite a bit of this in so you can see the process that I went through. This lovely kind of swirl here kind of just made me think a bit of a rolling hillside, and I thought Bunny would sit beautifully on that. Gives him something to sit on rather than floating in the air. And so again here you can see that I'm playing around, seeing how this would look with that in the background, exploring different things. And I just wanted to kind of show you how things start to come together. So I really love this kind of picture of the bird, and I was really aware I didn't have any birds yet in here. This is an enchanted garden, and my enchanted garden at home is absolutely teeming with birds. I also have a little wild bunny that comes to join me every morning for my meditation. So this is some of the inspiration that I guess kind of formed what was going on with this page. I wanted the bunny, I wanted a bird. So, and you guys know how much I love swirls and you know, all those beautiful bright colours and flowers. So just enjoying that process of playing and cutting out and exploring the what ifs. now just bringing in some other elements. I've got Rachel's kind of cards and pictures all scattered around me, so I'm just picking up what feels like it might fit. So I'm fussy cutting out some more of these flowers, which we have also used elsewhere in the project. So again, it's just kind of bringing in that cohesive feeling, cutting out all of those little flowers and starting to see how we can build up this kind of collage here. And this kind of beautiful swirl here, I'm thinking about our bunny here and thinking about it looking up at that moon and how beautiful that would be with that wonderful swirl there. And cutting out some more of these flowers. I really want to build up that base just to get all those layers in. So I am just picking bits and cutting them and playing around with them. As you can see, all of those flowers I fussy cut over there. And of course, we know what we need to do with them now, don't we? We need to add that beautiful gold to them like we have everywhere else in the project. So here is my rather worn out looking VersaMark embossing ink pen. I think this project may well have ended up killing this pen, but that's fine. That's the purpose of it, to be used. So I am just going round the very edge of all of these fussy cut flowers here, adding that beautiful wow gold embossing powder and then heat setting that. And yeah, not being too fussy about where the embossing powder is going. I don't mind a little bit of flex, but I don't want that great big thumbprint that I left there. So just using a paintbrush where I need to, just to tidy things up a little bit and make sure that that embossing powder is where I want it to be. Always making sure to put my embossing powder back in the pot and pop the lid on before I get the heat gun out so I don't blow it everywhere, and using my tweezers just to protect my hand so I don't end up burning myself with a heat gun because, you know, I may well have done that before. And just going through all of those beautiful flowers that I fussy cut over there and doing the exact same thing with it. And now these larger elements as well. So again, just coming back with the VersaMark ink pen. I do have the VersaMark ink pad, which I've used in this project before, but I love the versatility that you get with the ink pen because you can do things like this with it. So again, just going around all the elements and gold embossing the edges. Now these pieces are printed on a more kind of like almost kind of photo style paper. So you need to be a little bit more careful when you're embossing that. So I tend to either come in right at the side so the heat is right on that embossing powder, or from the back so that you're heating it through, because otherwise there is the potential to damage that kind of coating, I guess, on the paper. So just being aware of that, testing things out before you do things so you know how your medium is going to respond. So here's all the elements that I have fussy cut and gold embossed, and now it's time to start thinking about how this all goes together. So I need a piece of paper to put it all together on a background. So just kind of lining that up so I make sure I've got the right size of paper there. And before I stick that down, I just want to add a little bit of that lustre wax around that book tape, so that again it pulls in what we've done elsewhere in the project, but it also just kind of ages a little bit and brings in that gold colour around there. So I'm just going to do that all the way around and kind of on both sides as well, so making sure that that is all covered in the same way, nice and consistent, and it just brings in that nice gold colour all the way around. And that is where the piece of paper will go. And I can now put the book aside. What I quite like to do now is work on this piece of paper away from the book so that I can't accidentally spill things everywhere. And I can get things right on this piece of paper. If everything goes horribly wrong, it's not stuck in the book yet. So again, I am just bringing in the same elements that we have used elsewhere in the project. So the dictionary page and the original pages from this book before we altered it, and just sort of starting to play around with the composition of how this might look. Just so I can start to see where things need to go and how much of things I need and whether I've got any gaps that I need to fill in. and again, this is not the first time that I have played around with this composition. I honestly, there are so many different versions that I tried of this. This is the one that kind of mostly makes it through to the final cut. But I must have probably 3 nights spent playing around, putting things in, trying it out, walking away, taking a photograph. So when I get the composition I like, I take a photograph of that and keep hold of that. So I actually have that on my iPad screen in front of me at my art desk, so I can kind of recreate as much as possible, but it always ends up changing a little bit. So nothing different here to what we've done before. I've torn up the dictionary page, I'm edging it with Vintage Photo Distress Oxide, and doing the same with the lovely floral page from the original book. Oh, here comes Roscoe to join us. Sorry about that. Here he is. He gets fascinated by all of this. And then sticking the two together, so sticking that floral page on top of the dictionary page, so we have that layered effect, and then just cutting that to size. So here we go, just using my HiTack glue, just to stick that down. Pulling all of the elements together. So it has taken pretty much a whole week of playing around with this, but putting the elements together at the end doesn't take so much time. And again, just bringing in things that we've done previously. So I'm just using that little paper Artsy mini stamp with the script on it, and just using the tea dye and the bundled sage, and just adding a little hint of text in the background, partly for texture, but also partly because it's that part of the page that is showing is going to be the only page for journaling on this page, because there's not enough kind of space left for me to create something that's got more bulk to it, pockets and journaling cards, because the dragonfly pockets underneath have, you've used up a lot of that space that we created with the putting in the extra little spines. So this page has to be flat. So that's why I've kind of gone to town with the kind of collage element of it, to really kind of, give that page some real substance. But the blank areas of the tea dye paper in the background are really going to be the only places for journaling. So putting that script stamp on there also kind of gives people permission to go in and write in that place. So now it's time to start sticking down the key elements. I always start with the big key elements to start with, because then I build everything else around there. This piece here, I am gluing all the way to the edge, because I know that this is going to sit at the very kind of back. Nothing else is going to go behind this or be layered behind it. Everything will be layered on top of it. So I'm sticking this one down all the way to the edge. Not using any different glue here. This is just my HiTack glue that I put in that little bottle to make sure I don't splurge it everywhere. But you'll notice when I glue this one down, I don't go all the way to the edges. I leave the edges unglued so that I can tuck things behind it and start to create that layered effect. So just thinking about where I want this to go, because this is what my bunny is going to sit on. It's going to give him that sense of having a bit of a, I mean, you're not going to see very much of it, but it gives that sense of he's got something that he sat on rather than floating in the air. So now I know it's in the right place. Rather than taking out and gluing it, I'm going to leave it where it is and add some glue. So this is how I build my collages up, just kind of allowing for that space to move things around. So a little bit of glue to keep it in place, but not so much glue that I can't then do things like this. I'm trying to play around that. Am I going to have that swirl coming in front of that sidebar or not? And realising it doesn't really matter, because that big flower is going to cover it all up anyway. And testing out where Bunny is going, because actually what I don't want is for that sidebar and Bunny to be connected. So that helps me to know that I need to move that sidebar out a little bit and not use the full width of it. So this is why I haven't stuck all of that down yet. So as you can see, even though I kind of did that composition before and I've got the photograph in front of me, I'm still playing a little bit. I'm still experimenting. This is still not going to be exactly the same as the photo. It never will be. But as you start to stick things down, you start to notice things where there might be a little gap or how one angle might complement another. So that not sticking that all the way down means I can tuck that flower behind that little bird there. And every layering we have creates that sense of depth. And what's lovely about using these leaves and those flowers on the right hand side of the board there is that these have all been used elsewhere in the project as well. So even though a lot of the key elements on this page are new, actually we've got those kind of bits that bring everything together. So I'm going to really speed this up for you now so that you don't have to spend hours watching me fiddle around and glue, but I wanted you to see how this all starts to come together. So you can see how I don't need that full width of that sidebar that I made there. So now I've got that stuck down, I can trim that to size. I think it's much easier to work on the page at the right size so you can see where everything is and how it's fitting in. So I do trim things off as I go along. And sticking Bunny in there on his little hill. And then adding all the flowers. So I will let this all speed up and put some nice music on for you whilst you watch. So time just to trim off all the edges here. I do leave this sat underneath a couple of very heavy books for an hour whilst I go out for a walk, just to make sure everything is stuck down brilliantly. And I decided before I added my kind of swirly moony thing that I wanted to add some more gold embossing. So I'm just taking the fine tip of that embossing pen and just tracing the lines of the swirls before adding some more. Do you know what? I've nearly run out of that gold embossing powder. I've used pretty much the whole pot during this project. So I will need to get a new one because it's one of my favourites. And I am going to heat set this from the back mostly, so that I'm not kind of going to damage that nice kind of coating this has been printed on. And then just deciding where I want that to be. I want Bunny to look like he's kind of really properly looking up at it, and to balance that swirl up in the right hand corner there. Giving that a good push down to make sure it's properly stuck before cutting off the excess, which I shall use elsewhere because that's a beautiful, beautiful swirl. And oh my gosh, I'm starting to get quite excited looking at this point. And what I want to do, because I can see all the gold edging on the pieces that I fussy cut and embossed, and so there's some pieces there where there's some gold and then not. So I'm using the gold Lustre Wax just to kind of fill in along the edges where there is kind of Rachel's artwork, and then when it's just tea dye paper, I'm coming in with the vintage photo and edging it. And I just saw a little bit where it felt unbalanced, where I wanted to add a little bit more of that script stamp. So it's just still kind of always looking at it and looking at how it feels and kind of adjusting anything as I need to. And this is the bit where I get super excited, when I place it here and see how it looks with everything else, and you think, oh my gosh, it just looks so good with that page on the left hand side. So it's time to stick it in, lots of HiTack glue, and really smearing that really right up to the edge, because I don't want any edges of the page kind of peeling up. So really kind of making sure I get a proper good kind of connection between that piece of board and the page. And I spent quite a bit of time just making sure that was properly stuck down and any glue squidges were mopped up. And I'm now putting in that spine as well. I left that because I didn't know if I was going to have a tie closure between the spine and the page, but I think it just looks amazing as it is. So here we go. That's the last of the internal pages, guys. I can't believe it. I really can't believe that we're at this point already, and that we've created this much stuff. It's quite unbelievable. I'm so pleased with how this has come together. I had no idea when I set out that this is what it was going to be like. So just the front page left to go and the closure. So I hope you have enjoyed the journey so far. I hope you've enjoyed this page, and we will be doing the front cover and the closure next, and that will be it. Final episode coming very soon.